Productive Pastor 109, small productivity is real productivity. What's going on, friends? Chad Brooks. Welcome back to Productive Pastor, the place online where we talk about healthy ministry through strategic productivity. We're getting into those dog days of summer, my friends, when things just get a little bit different. They get a little bit slower. They get a little bit ill-focused, maybe. But I love summer. I love what summer means in ministry. I love what summer means when you have a larger plan towards productivity, because, so many times summer is when you can, reset things, hit the button, think about some stuff, all of that. And what I'm going to talk about today is one of my favorite topics. And it's the conversation I have with people when they know that something has to happen, when they want to wrestle down the chaos monster with productivity. So many times they get anxious thinking that it's going to mean big, huge changes, like fixing big things. And this is where you'll see people fizzle out. They'll try to change too much. They'll get bogged down in the minutia of tools and of strategies and of books and all those sorts of things. But it's actually the small stuff that matters so much. That's what we're talking about today. Before we jump into that, just put one thing in front of you, the Productive Pastor email. Every week I send this out. So we have over 500 pastors now getting this month. I'm talking about using email, about what email marketing looks like in the church. Now, you might hear the word marketing and think that it is something different, but no, it's taking advantage of technological tools to develop more specific, intentional strategies about using email in the local church. Friends, I think email is the new social media. Email is the thing that matters. So make sure you go subscribe. You're getting those emails, opening those emails as we have that conversation. But let's go into the primary topic today. Small productivity is real productivity. Now, I've got a quote from James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, one of the best modern productivity people that's thinking about things and talking about things. And I came across this quote in ReadWise a few days ago, and it just struck me. I already had this episode outlined, but he managed to bring it home in a way that's just super fantastic. So here's the quote. The impact created by a change in your habits is similar to the effect of shifting the route of an airplane by just a few degrees. Imagine you are flying from Los Angeles to New York City. If a pilot leaving from LAX adjusts the heading just 3.5 degrees south, you will land in Washington, D.C. instead of New York. Such a small change is barely noticeable at takeoff. The nose of an airplane moves just a few feet, but when magnified across the entire United States, you end up hundreds of miles apart. This is from Atomic Habits by James Clear. So what does this quote tell us? Tiny little shifts have the ability to seriously redirect us either towards or away from any larger goal. In episode 105, just a few weeks back, I talked about productivity pitfalls and how they can really hurt our ministry ability. In this episode, what I want us to think about is the opposite side of that conversation, about how small things, when changed, have the ability to keep us significantly more focused, by how they can be really, really strong in ministry productivity and leadership. So in this episode, I'm going to talk about small productivity, but I'm going to give you the three things that matter. I think the three small things that matter no matter what. So we're going to just do three kind of broader conversations. But number one is, Chad, I've got problems. Chaos has entered the building. I get emails from folks or DMs. Back when I was doing most of my ministry through coaching, I had a lot of these conversations. It's when a pastor realizes, hey, I've got problems, and I think productivity can fix the problems. It might be saying, I struggle with motivation. Or they're saying, I'm getting the feeling that people are frustrated with my leadership, especially relationally or organizationally. And, productivity can affect, both of those things in either a positive way or a negative way. Remember, the focus of Productive Pastor is healthy ministry through strategic productivity. And I think all five of the words in that sentence matter. Healthy ministry through strategic productivity. We don't have productive ministry. We should be striving for a healthy ministry. And for some of us, the best way to do that is through the lens of productivity. It's not just about getting more things done. It's not about doing things a lot. It's about seeing that there's a focus towards what healthy ministry looks like for you. And healthy ministry is going to look different for every single person. And there's other ways we can get to healthy ministry. There's people I respect a lot. I had a fantastic conversation with a friend yesterday about the work of John Mark Comer. And, you see there's a directive lens towards healthy ministry there. There's all sorts of places. But the way I like to talk about it, especially on the podcast, is a lens of strategic productivity. So think about this. What we could try to do if you realize you've got problems is you could try to do massive, huge, big things. When you might totally want to reinvent yourself or you go into some like hardcore manic understanding of a new life and you just jump full tilt boogie into this thing. Sometimes that can work. But what I found out to be true in my life and also the life of a bunch of other pastors is it really struggles. And the next thing you know, 6 weeks later, you're kind of back to where you are. Think of this analogy, and I'm bad about this. I've gotten better about it, but I'm bad about this. But have you ever started a new hobby and then you immediately go wholesale into it and you might spend way too much time? You might watch way too many YouTube videos. You might, back in the day, you might have joined way too many forums about it. You might spend too much money and immediately try to level up the equipment you might need or the things you might need to be the best there is in the hobby, thinking that's going to make me do a better job at it. I've been doing combat sports for the last year and a half, and I love it. And I kind of when I jumped into it, I went a little bit big into it. The next 6 months ago, I decided to start training in a different aspect of it alongside of it at the same time. And my wife even said, she said, Chad, don't buy too much stuff and don't buy the nicest stuff. And so I listened to her. I bought the bare minimum, and I bought a good entry-level kit for what I needed for the bare minimum, because the likelihood of me sticking around with that and going as full deep into it as I thought I might initially might not have been what would end up true. And now here we go. Now I think I have stuck around after jiu-jitsu and trained MMA maybe 3 or 4 times in the last few months. But luckily the investment I made on the front end of it was not nearly as much as I have made on the front end of things in previous times. It's a great example of when we just go super, super deep in a full commitment into things without it actually changing that much stuff. So if we go back earlier to the plane analogy, you don't make a quick change of direction in an airliner. I remember one time I was on a plane that had to circle, I think, or we had to make some sort of a change, and I was looking on the map. I'm one of the people that likes to look on the screen in front of me, like, where is the plane? And I remember asking questions like, why on earth are we 125 miles away from where we're supposed to be when we're just circling? Because an airliner takes big, huge shifts through small little directions. And all of my experience, usually making a 180-degree change, especially because, what my primary work in ministry is right now is in the realm of congregational development. What I love to tell congregations, because usually they're used to people like me coming in and then changing everything and changing big things and causing even more chaos to hope that you smooth even like previous chaos out. That's not how I like to roll. In my experience, just changing a few deliberate things done over the long distance have the ability to make the biggest difference. So that's the conversation about, Chad, I've got problems. And we're just realizing, okay, you've realized this. Let's potentially think about taking a different direction to solving these problems. That's what we're going to go to in the second part of the episode. 3 things that matter. These are 3 things I told you about at the top end of things. So 3 simple things I think you can distill all strategic productivity into: tasks, your calendar, and managing your day. Really breaking down productivity in those 3 simple categories: your tasks, your calendar, and how you manage your day are going to have the biggest changes. And they're also the things that are just a couple of degree clicks away. Because in reality, what you need to do is not change everything, but say, okay, what's 1 or 2 things I can do better inside of those 3 categories? What is a baseline, a minimum viable product of productivity that I can get to that will stabilize things out, especially if you're in a tailspin. I'm realizing right now there's a lot of aviation analogies as part of this episode. But the first thing, tasks. So the question, how are you keeping up with things? Are you writing things down and reviewing them? At one point in time in my life, I ended up having to stack multiple notebooks together, and I had this kind of cool leather thing that kept them all together. because I was tired of trying to keep up with way too many things. And I'm a big write things down. I tell people all the time, if you don't see me write this down, I'm probably going to forget about it. So please, you can even say, Chad, write that down. I've had to really work on that over the last few years. And through intentionality, it's gotten to the point to where, stuff doesn't fall through the cracks nearly as much as it used to because the systems that are there. But it all begins with, okay, I'm going to write things down. I'm going to either carry a notebook with me and it just is going to be glued to my body, or I'm going to be diligent in the way that I use Apple Notes or some other digital tool on your phone to just write things down. Because this is why this matters. Are you allowing your brain to not have to save everything? The task management, in so many ways, the biggest first step forward is to simply get it out of your brain. Your brain can get overwhelmed very easily, especially in ministry where you're having to hold on to all sorts of things, little things and big things and everywhere in between. Just beginning to develop that habit of writing things down will let your brain not have to do so much work to save everything. And instead, you just can build in the rhythms. Okay, I'm just going to go back at the end of the day, the end of the week, the end of the month. Just make sure, hey, am I keeping things in the air? So that's that first piece is a task. Just write things down. Second thing is this. It's about your calendar. I coached someone in the last couple of years that did not even keep a calendar. They didn't keep a notebook, a calendar, nothing. They just rolled with it in their mind completely. Friends, they were really, really high level, but that is savage. Like that is hardcore. I love the memes you see now of the dad that rolls into the airport without a book, without a phone, without earbuds, and they'll just sit down and power out a 5-hour flight. Yet another aviation analogy, because they don't need anything. Friends, that I could not believe how well this person was keeping up with stuff, literally not using any tools whatsoever at all. I think a calendar and just understanding how you use a calendar is a big thing, because that calendar is a commitment to think. And what this means is you make a commitment to thinking through your calendar, saying, hey, I keep a calendar. I use a calendar. I'm going to put things in it. And I'm going to place boundaries around my calendar. I'm going to be able to sit down like, wow, this week is already really, really loaded. I'm going to develop my expectations alongside of knowing I've got a week where 30 hours are already blocked out because of meetings and other commitments to things. The calendar, being a calendar person is a huge, huge step forward. Also, as you just schedule your growth areas, because here's the deal. If hey, and remember I talked to you earlier about how, this sort of things helps out, not just like organizationally, but also relationally. And if one of your growing edges, and this is something that comes up a lot with the pastors I work with, and say, hey, Chad, folks are really frustrated with my leadership because they feel like I'm not very present. Well, you know what? Build a couple of blocks into your calendar saying, hey, this is what I'm going to be available for anybody, and my office door is going to be open. I'm going to make a commitment to having one lunch a week with a key leader, and I'm going to have another time block commitment to spend, 1 hour a week with a new person or discipling somebody intentionally or developing a new leader, that sort of stuff. Your calendar also lets you can schedule in your growth, because you say, hey, I'm committing myself X amount of hours a week to this place I know I need to develop competency into. Calendars are a very basic thing. It's a very basic strategy to kind of go into that can, it's a couple degree click forward that can pay off huge dividends. The last thing is this: how are you managing your day? I talk about the day sheet all the time. I've given away thousands of that download over the last 10 or so years. You've heard me talk about the day sheet constantly, but seriously, like this is one of the biggest game changers I've seen with folks that recognize they have problems that might be solved through productivity. How do you manage your day? Make a plan, try to stick to the plan. The managing your day well with a day sheet or calendar management, that sort of stuff, it reminds you if you get off task. You can also be working within your task list. You don't have that moment where I don't know what I can be doing right now. Actually, this is going to take 15 minutes. It's on my task list. Let me spend the time on my calendar today because I've got an hour until my next thing I have to be at. I can knock off this task within that hour. Now, your ability to manage your day is another thing that can just be a few degree clicks that can lead to a completely different destination. That's a more healthy destination. So that's the second conversation, the three things that matter. The last conversation is this. You might be asking the question, Chad, but what about those big things? Yeah, big things are going to pop up. It's part of responsiveness in ministry. But here's the thing. If you've not handled the little stuff well, the big stuff is going to be a lot rougher. Think back to that parable of Jesus shows up in several of the Gospels, where his kind of hook at the end is, people who can be trusted with a lot can be trusted with even more. When you get into high-level leadership situations, you're going to need more. You're going to have to think about those higher things. But honestly, it's all based off of those three things: the tasks, the calendar, and learning how to manage your day. That's when those skills become amplified. And the skills you need to learn when things are pretty chill absolutely come into play when things have to get bigger. I'll go back to the analogy all the time because it's the thing that I know the most about ministry. I remember when we went through a capital campaign, that took a tremendous amount of time management, of organizational leadership, but also relational leadership. And all I did was become more intentional and focused ways with those three simple things: the task, the calendar, and how I managed my day. That's really all it takes. And so if you don't build up those skills, when you need those skills, if those skills are not built up and they're not functioning at a minimum level, when you need them to function at a higher level, it's going to be 10 times harder to build in the practices and the regulations for doing this. So here's the thing. Don't worry about the software. Don't worry about the perfect app. Don't worry about the tool, any of those sorts of things until you feel like you have a really good handle on those three basic tasks, of those basic things: tasks, calendar, managing your day. For instance, you could do that completely analog if you have to. And if you're kind of all over the place, unless you have this very distinct need that's going to take digital solutions, I would say, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a notebook. I'm going to go on YouTube and watch about bullet journaling, and I'm going to draw out a weekly calendar. I'm just going to do this in this one place. Because if you struggle with high-level stuff, digging into these areas, they're simple, have the ability to change things the most. That's that you're not setting your course accidentally to DC. You're going to be able to be heading towards New York City consistently with what that's meaning. So I wanted to have this conversation today. It's a more positive side of the more frustrating, potentially negative side. We talked about episode 105. Now, if you want to get resources for this episode, you want to get a link to the day sheet. If you don't have that yet, you can get it for free. I'll send it to you for free. The link to do that is in the show notes, revchadbrooks.com/PPP/109. Friends, as always, it's a pleasure and an honor to be part and steward this conversation about healthy ministry through strategic productivity. I'll see you back on our next episode next week. And until then, just keep focused on what's ahead and build the things around you that help keep you focused on that. I'll see you back next time.